Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare of bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Still remain standing. I'd like to have a moment of silence for Clay Everhart, a longtime Rotarian who passed recently. Now we'll have Carrie come up to deliver our invitation.
Join me in prayer. Heavenly God, as we recognize and celebrate the founding of Rotary on this very day, 121 years ago, we ask your help in remembering the important watchwords of Rotary: truthfulness, fairness, goodwill, and benefits to all. The significance of these words, often forgotten in the world today, cannot be underestimated. Help us to remember with kindness those who are infirmed or bereaved, who are living in fear, desperate loneliness, and living without freedom. We ask that you continue to bless our men and women in our military, our first responders, and our teachers. We fervently ask your guidance for our leaders at all levels of city, state, and national government, so that their decisions promote our safety, security, fairness, compassion, and success for all. Help us to seek truth without malice, investigate action without prejudice, and use our logic to support noble causes with honor. Close with meaningful words of Archbishop Bernard Anthony Hebden of Minnesota. God of truth, teach us to face difficult realities with honesty and care, to seek accountability without cruelty, and to work for change without losing our humanity. All this we offer, and we ask, each in our own way pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, and I want to welcome everyone today. And I'm coming around here because I actually get the pleasure of introducing our student guests today. Our student guests are from University High, and I want to first introduce their leadership that they brought with them. Robert Clark, their lead counselor, Dr. Quenisha Johnson, principal, and Dr. Tiffany Spicer, superintendent. Welcome. We're so glad. And now I'd like to ask Kimberly and Lacy to come up here. We'll start with Miss Kimberly. Miss Kimberly is accompanied by her mother Maria, and she is in National Honor Society. She served as president of the National Honor Society. She participated in the blood drive. She was a varsity and competitive cheerleader. She is a dual credit ambassador. She participated in the cycling program, and she is an academic achiever times 3. She's a superintendent scholar and College Board First Generation Recognition Award. In the community, she participated in Upward Bound with NCC at the animal shelter and as a church volunteer. I'm going to hand the microphone to Kimberly to tell us about your future plans and what you want to do next.
My name is Kimberly, and I plan to attend the University of Texas at Austin and major in kinesiology so that I can go into occupational therapy.
And next we have Lacy, whose mother Adela has come to share this with him, with us. He's also National Honor Society. You're looking at President and Vice President. He is an avid ambassador, also participated in Upward Bound for math and science, academic achiever times 3, graduating top 5%. And does this say you're graduating from NCC? That's incredible. So he's graduating with his associate's degree. He has over 300 hours of volunteering and fundraising with the National Honor Society and University High Lighthouse Leadership Program. I'm going to hand this over to Lacy so he can tell you about his future plans.
Hey, my name is Lacy, and my future plans are to go to Yale University and graduate with my electrical engineering degree. Thank you.
Thank you for your administrators and parents for coming. You have a few announcements that I will go through really quick. First, I wanted to recognize our K. Paul Holt, who received a special scouting recognition last week, a Distinguished Volunteer Award from the Longhorn Council of Scouting of America. Theater and Arboretarians are honored, so if you know someone who's been honored, who's part of our Rotary Club, please let us know because we want to recognize them and celebrate them. Our Youth Citizenship Award banquet is coming up in a few months. We're working on selecting those dollars now. We have table sponsorships. $250 to sponsor a table. We have 26 sponsorships. If you would like to sponsor a table, please see Joanne. You can see me as well. I will help you out with that. Glad to take your money. We have District Service Texas Day on March 28th. So mark your calendars and keep an eye out for that. I know we've got an exciting program, so I'm going to hand this over to Kate Hall to get us started.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a very different program today than we're accustomed to doing. I'd like to, it's just so awesome. This is the anniversary of the founding of Rotary. We are going to have folks there. We do have a large interest topic in town, data centers. It's an interest topic all over the state. And I do want to remind people this isn't a political rally. It's not a protest rally. It is simply an informational opportunity to hear two sides of one story. A buddy of mine wrote a tune on the Long Run album. There's 3 sides to every story. There's your side, my side, and the cold part. If you do as well as I did, it makes it easy. One other famous philosopher named Chris Christopherson shared a phrase back in the late 60s, early 70s that has stuck with me, and it's very simple. Most of us hate anything that we don't understand. Now, today, we're moving forward. We've got a whole lot more technology than we did 50 years ago. There's more movable parts and functional parts everywhere else. I do want to remind everybody that if we do get time for questions, remind you of the 4-week test. Is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? And I introduced everybody at the head table. Why don't we go ahead and pull up our big chairs and get microphones ready. Each team will share a microphone. And get these folks sitting up here where we can see a little bit better. And looking forward to this being kind of a conversational back and forth opportunity. See here, on my far right is Calvin Hottie. He was the construction manager for NeighborWorks Waco for 25 years. He served on the council starting in 1998 for 4 years, and then in 2002 was elected mayor until he left the city limits. So they brought him back as city manager. I can tell you that Calvin was also a trap shooter. We also have the mayor, Chuck Wilson, who's a Waco native, former CIA officer, did a lot of work in Africa and the Counterterrorism Center. Chuck was elected to Lakeview City Council in 2019. He's been reelected twice and was elected mayor in 2024. As we move across here, we have Sean Terrell, who is an automation and controls engineer with experience in hyperscale data center construction and in industrial automation systems. With my background in commercial construction, I was still a little blown away by the hyperscale. I'm kind of hyperactive, so the hyperscale is probably what threw me off. And then we have Dana Bear, who has been a resident of Chalk Bluff for over 30 years, a Texas A&M graduate, and a current financial controller. Last on the group is Chris Gravitt, who's a lifelong resident of the greater Waco area, having resided in Bellmead, Waco, Robinson, and most recently, Elmont. Did you have houses in all these places, or you just, okay? You're not homeless. Okay. He holds an MBA from West Texas A&M University and is currently director of an Austin-based health insurance group where he focuses on managing large national employer groups. I thought I would start today by having you give us your best 2-minute elevator talk about why you're on one side and they're not.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come and visit today. It's good to be back at Rotary. I was a member of this club for a while, and I appreciate the opportunity to clue people in. I think the biggest question we get is, why Lacy Lakeview? And it all started for me not long after I got elected mayor. I kind of thought we had a handle on our roads, and we had a handle on our water, and we did. We have solutions for some of our problems. And then I discovered we have a potential $15 million liability in the sewer line that's full. And through the grapevine, Infraty, who had bought this piece of property, approached us, learning about our sewer issues, and they have a desire to run their facility on effluent. And I thought this was a natural fit, and that's how the whole relationship started. Of course, I'm aware of the data center thing. It's a national security priority. It's a national economic development priority, and we are behind. China has been opening up 6 coal-fired plants a month for over a decade, and we are way behind in energy. China produces 12 times the steel that we do every year. We have a massive shortfall. It's almost like a Sputnik moment when we discovered Russia was ahead of us in the space race, where we realized when it comes to heavy industry becoming the arsenal of democracy, like we were in World War II, we're not that anymore. And that's a real problem for national security. It's a real problem if we're going to be serious about trade. We have to export things if we're going to fix our trade deficit. So we have a massive problem that national policy is attempting to address across the board. It's going to require infrastructure, and it's going to require data centers.
All right. From the Citizens Committee, would like to, all right, Sean?
The data center would fix that.
I'm happy to be here, Rotary. I grew up around Rotary. My father was the president of the University of Louisiana, chapter where I'm from, twice. And so just wanted to get the other side of that. It is a national security issue. We do have need for data centers. We don't need to rush to put these anywhere that we can, simply because we can put them on property. There are national security implications, and there are community implications to rush it to do anything. Thanks, Tom, for that. Good afternoon. I'm Chris Rabbit, and first, I want to thank the Rotary Club for having us. I think this is a meaningful discussion that we should be having in a public forum quite often with many of the things that are happening in the Greater Waco area that impacts all of us. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and talk to you. Secondly, I'd like to welcome and congratulate the student representatives. I've got a daughter that's 18 and will be graduating the same way that you are, and I know it takes a lot of work and dedication and sacrifice and prioritizing, and sometimes that means you don't get to do fun things that maybe you want. And so congratulations on your hard work and your future's ahead of you. I think what you're seeing today is a shining example of what you can contribute in the near future to your community. So look for those opportunities, participate in those opportunities because it's meaningful. So once again, congratulations. In terms of the data center and where we're at and why we're here today, you know what's interesting as we've learned about this is what are the impacts? And we don't know what we don't know. And how we found out about this was essentially a leak from the Waco Bridge that is following this. And that's what's been concerning. We are in an area where it's considered an unincorporated area, an extra territorial jurisdiction, meaning we're not a part of this Lakeview. And they are looking to absorb this because we have no voting rights, we have no ability to partake in conversations of how this may impact us. And I think that's what's very concerning for us.
It seems that the primary, or one of the primary issues, at least in Texas, has to do with having enough water, groundwater, to operate one of these. I know that some of these centers are oil-cooled, most of them are water-cooled, and then there is a degree of noise, etc. How do you anticipate this?
As envisioned, this particular project is a water-cooled system. Water-cooled systems are the quietest systems. And one of the most interesting things watching Infrared and being a part of some other presentations, CEOs of other companies, is the degree to which we have infinite demand at the moment for data centers. And we have extremely limited supply, in no small part because of the limitations of infrastructure. And those limitations may vary from place to place, but there's one or more components missing in most areas. And data centers are having to bring that infrastructure with them. And part of that reconciling supply and demand, that infinite demand and very limited supply, is that it drives innovation. And I saw a generator presentation not long ago where they were actually able to distill enough water to cool the generator out of the ambient air intake into the engine. Amazing things that we're going to see. And so what we're going to expect is that the noise and the water and almost all the fatigues, to include the energy models, the solutions are going to be radically, transformatively innovative. And just since we've watched, first thing Infrared does when they're any company, when they want to build, is they go out and try to secure all the supplies of infrastructure they can get. And we've watched their water demands diminish substantially. It's going to take a lot of water to fill up their closed loop systems. They're going to use water to cool the radiators, which of course are going to have coolants in them, much like you have in your vehicles. And there's ample water for these things. We'll get into this in a minute. I'm sure water will come up in particular, and I'd like to address it more directly. But it's really fascinating as a business school guy to watch these things develop and innovate along the way.
And what are y'all's concerns about the water and noise?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, I'll take a few things and hand it over here to my cohorts, is, I think this was presented as being in a very much rural area where there's just large agriculture and taking up space that no one is near. The fact of the matter is my home is about 50 feet away from where this would be. Other homes are directly around it, and I think, again, it goes back to what we don't know, and what we've been able to find is there's significant noise impact. And then the water that we're talking about is not necessarily insignificant. Phase 1 is 5 million gallons per day. That's equivalent to a city of 50 to 60,000 people. So I think we have to understand exactly what this piece is before we can begin saying that this makes sense for us. The last thing I'll say is, it's not necessarily, do we disagree with data centers? We all use technology, right? It's hard to say you go against technology. Well, that's the reason we're able to be here today, is because we found out by technology. But where does this work for us? This is an industrial complex that we designed and will be built. Does it belong, even though we have large plots, does it belong to a residential area? I say no.
Just to talk quickly on the noise and the technology has been however, those operate the radiators, it will run about 20 of them per building. There is a requirement for that, that's 120 industrial size fans for every building, for every data hall. That's just the truth. In North Dakota, they are able to run free cooling where they don't have to run fans because of the ambient air temperature. We're not in North Dakota, we're in Texas. They don't have to run fans. And the company built a Bitcoin mining site because they will. Because it makes no sense to have the power requirements to not build a Bitcoin mining site. That's 60,000 AISC miners, each of them with a small jet engine fan of about four of them running very high frequency times, 60,000 at a time. That will give off.
Okay, now, if I understand correctly, with full build out, there will be 20 buildings about the size of Home Depot. Is that pretty accurate?
That sounds right.
Okay. And that'll provide a gigawatt of power to run 750,000 homes. That sounds like a lot of noise. How,
Well, the simple truth is the water cool systems are required. You can do your own research. Current technology is running about 55 to 65 decibels at the front door to the building. Right? Well, this is a square mile, effectively. It's 520 acres. So it's 8/10 of a square mile. And certainly if you're next door, you will perhaps hear something. If you're a few hundred feet away, you will hear very little in terms of new noise. I went by the facility today and did a data reading, a decibel reading. 48 to 52 sitting at the front gate of the property. So the amount of additional sound that's going to be generated from this is not significant. These are not noisier than any other manufacturing facility that we could propose to be built. That doesn't mean that someone living next door is hearing things that they haven't heard before. I can relate to that. My house fronts on Golson Road. They took it from 2 lanes to 5 and have 80 decibels on my front porch, 500 feet off the road. So at the end of the day, this data center is going to be quieter than Golson Road. And I think that if we're going to be factual and realistic about what to expect, that's what we see in Lacy Lakeview with our independent research.
okay, now, you mentioned you went by the facility. The 48, 52 decibels that you saw, is that during the construction phase?
That was at 10 a.m. this morning, and so there's no road traffic, there's no, a tractor passed me by. It was about 52 in downtown Ross. The tractor passed me by, it went up to 80. Noise is noise in relative terms. If you hear it, you don't like it, and we get that. But I think that's presenting this as somehow kind of an extraordinary amount of noise compared to any other commercial or industrial facility. It's not really realistic.
Okay. Now, I think a simple question would be if you had 20 buildings putting out 65 decibels. I realize that 20 times 65, is that enhanced?
I don't think noise is geometric like water. You know, water accumulates as it runs downhill. I don't think noise quite looks that way. Now, wind has a big impact. I can tell you my property is a lot noisier in the south wind is the way the road runs, and in the north it's actually quite quiet. And so I think you're going to see that with people in the south of this property will probably not experience the noise that people in the north will experience just because of the prevailing southerly winds that we have.
Sean, what is your take on that with your construction background in engineering?
The construction will be, the thing I'm more concerned about is the vehicle. Have you been to a bit more mining facility? How are you measuring these decibels?
Well, you mentioned a little bit of decibel meter. Bitcoin mining, I have not heard a single mention of that in our minds. And it is a different model, and a different cost structure. Bitcoin mining has different infrastructure needs. It's typically a lower overhead. So if you build a hyperscale facility for the big names that we all see on the New York Stock Exchange, you sort of inherently have a cost break-even point that's not usually beneficial for the Bitcoin miner.
Once you establish the necessary electrical infrastructure in order to power a data center, building a Bitcoin mining facility is incredibly cheap and it may take around $850 a year. There will be Bitcoin mining facilities. It's in their MOA.
That's what I was going to mention. It is in their MOA, or MOU that they will be looking at. They are trying to attract that kind of tenant, the Bitcoin coin. They don't have it all a lot to work out. Another thing I wanted to mention is a 21 buildings the size of Home Depot. And my cousin lives right across the street. This is a 30-foot wide county road. It is not a farm-to-market road like the one at Laguna Park is building or the one in Hubbard. And they also, he also mentions that there's not very many houses around there. There's still one house. There are houses lined up across the street from where this is going to be built. And I don't think any one of you, if y'all live in that house and you're going to look across the field and see 21 Home Depots with all the infrastructure on it, would agree that this would be the right location. The massive amount of construction 24/7 that happens on these is going to tear up the road. We have not heard of how the roads are going to be constructed or what paths they're going to go through. We've heard of eminent domain. These landowners are concerned, and we have not got answers for any of these at this point. Yet, in June or July is when stuff is supposed to be arriving. And this is just things that we have found. We don't know these for facts because we have not had a lot of conversation to address some of these concerns that the residents have.
And by MOU and MOA, you're talking about memorandum of agreement or memorandum of understanding. That would be between the city and Entergy.
That we passed in '86.
Okay, that's all before the council. Now, one of the things that I have read is that this is, you're functioning under a pilot agreement or payment in lieu of taxes.
That's very much like the Bitcoin mining thing. The memorandum of agreement allows those things to happen. It is our business model for City of Lakeview to annex the property because we've been asked by Entergy to do so. If that's not possible, then a pilot agreement is what would normally be done, payment of taxes. Certainly that's what other taxing entities would love to do because they do not have a practical pathway to annexation. Our view is that with a pilot agreement, this is what cities have done because successive Congresses in Austin have restricted the ability of cities to annex against their will. You basically cannot annex unless you request it today. And so cities, their workaround is to just run the pipe, take a payment in lieu of taxes, and have the functional equivalent of annexation without actually being in the city. I will tell you that my two red lines, Calvin was there, we had some officials from the city, the state government, and Waco in our first meeting in December. I had two red lines. One, there will be a municipal layer of control over this property because at the end of the day, whatever you might be able to negotiate contractually in pilot agreements is not as strong as what you pass in ordinance and zoning and planning. And that is the appropriate way to control the kind of development and address the concerns that the data center has, is to have a proper process, bring them into the city, have ordinances, have zoning, have inspections, etc. A second red line was that the tax revenue would remain in the area. And that's the big reason why Lacy Lakeview is so earnest about this. Any other taxing entity that brings in water and executes a pilot agreement is going to take the money and they're going to go pay for debt on infrastructure already in the ground, probably on the west side of the county. And our view is, given the amount of tax base that is at hand here, the revenue should stay east of the river to finance development of roads and bridges and infrastructure and jobs and economic growth for that side of the county as well.
All right, thanks, sir.
Can we respond?
Yes, please.
As you heard Mayor Wilson say, they get to keep the revenue. None of the residents that are surrounding this land, 520 acres is surrounded. Now, it's not a neighborhood where there's houses on houses, people with land that have homes. It surrounds this entire 520 acres, front side, back side, sides. It doesn't have a side that does not have a homeowner on it. So none of those property owners will be receiving any of this tax revenue. And we do not get to have a say in any of the zoning or any of the taxation, any of that. So this is 4 miles outside of Lacy Lakeview's property line, not on a big farm to market road like the Laguna Park one. It's almost on the corner of 2 major farm to market roads. It's a 2-way highway with side shoulders so that big trucks can come up and down. And those roads have been redone twice. Now, the company has been paying for that, but the one in Hubbard is on a major farm to market road, 2-lane highway with shoulders. It's huge. I went by both of these, so I know what I'm talking about. So I'm not just saying this is huge and I haven't went to see it. This is a McLennan County road that will have to be, I don't know if it'll have to be reconstructed. I'm not a civil engineer, but the road is not going to be able to handle all of these humongous trucks. And we don't know the plan for this. We have not been updated about any of this when this will start. The neighbors are going to have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week construction. Concrete trucks line up for this construction, 2 a.m. in the morning at Laguna Park. I have somebody who lives there, I called them. He said they were lined up the other day, I had to wait. This is on a 2-lane with shoulder road, not a county road.
Paul, just if you don't mind to address this.
Okay.
We actually do have a plan, and it's they're in possession of the documents for a special purpose districts, one or more special purpose districts. There are different roles for some of these, but one of them in specific is to take care of the issues we're talking about. Special purpose districts, well, this is a loose concept that we're taxing entities pool of money to defend or improve the value of the tax base. And what that means is there's going to be impacts on the volunteer fire departments, impacts on the city of Ross, like you mentioned, on the roads, impacts on the county roads. And there are elegant ways to make sure that some of the tax revenue is available for upgrades, repairs, and to take care of these issues, up to and including extending sewer services, extending fire hydrants, and doing other things in the community. And this is not insignificant direct support to the volunteer fire departments. We've spoken to 2 of the 3 in the area. They're desperate for financing. They can't get the county to put up special purpose districts to fund volunteer fire departments, and we fully intend to do that. We will, of course, have a full-time fire department on site, but you can see a natural division of labor where the city would have the primary role for industrial and commercial use, and the volunteer fire departments perhaps would take on more of a residential and grass firing role. But those are things that we have to work out. I've said many times, the biggest thing that I worry about, we've got a lot of capable people working on the problem with respect to advisors and engineers and attorneys and consultants. The biggest thing I worry about is a failure of imagination. This is a profound amount of tax base. We're talking about the most conservative estimates. This would be equal to about half of the current county tax base. We're talking about a 50% increase in county tax base. And the worst thing that could happen is that we fail to imagine what is possible and how to improve all the area. That's why we went to all the entities in the area to make sure that we lift as many votes as possible as this thing comes in.
And there's no doubt, what is the proposed or projected construction period? Year, 2 years?
It's really, this is a great question that illustrates some of the difficulty that I have publicly communicating. I can say what I've heard, I can say what I think, but if it changes, it sounds like I was approved, right? What I can tell you is that most of these projects, very few of these data center projects are going to be able to just pull a building permit and build it in 18 months, walk away completed.
I'm the city quicker.
Yeah, it's true, yeah. And that's primarily because of the limitations on the infrastructure. They're waiting on all of the power. They're waiting on all of the water pipe to get here. We're going to have to construct a effluent plant to be able to treat it. We believe we're going to be able to run this project on effluent. Now, we do have, Infraheat has secure water rights, 14 million gallons. We have requested and are told we can contractually obtain until the reallocation of Lake Whitney up to 25 million gallons a day. So there's plenty of water. And I hope we come back to the water question because it's terribly disruptive. But the net effect is we believe we'll be able to run this entirely on effluent. And that is not only something Infraheat wants to do as part of their business model, it's actually something that their tenants are asking, and it is helping them to secure, we're told, lease tenants, because the lease tenants care about where this water comes from as well.
Yeah, basically, Paul, I'd love to respond to that. So, first of all, I appreciate you sharing that information. Unfortunately for us, it's the first time we've ever heard that. So this is kind of the position that we're at that I mentioned is we don't know what we don't know, and this is why it's concerning. As you heard, the building out of 20 to 21 Home Depots is significant. You're talking about right across the street. So where my mind goes is you're absolutely right. The tax base is a tremendous amount of money. And we'd be silly not to think about it, right? But also have to ask and argue, if we do this, what precedent does this begin to set in all of Money County at this point? That now it's a reach and grab for every other community that wants to go out into farmland towards the rural territory and be able to build out. I think it's important that we do these types of things thoughtfully, not that they're not necessary, but they deserve attention to be thoughtful to make sure that we're putting the infrastructure in places where they belong. No different than we put any other type of commercial type building. No different than we put any industrial space within our communities. We've done that for a purpose. I don't know that anyone wants to live in an industrial area. And so we set out to put these areas to protect us, to make sure we can go to work, and then we can go home, so we can have livelihoods. And I think that's the position that we're coming from is, if we can support the resources, that's fantastic. But we do not get the tax benefit. We are not able to have a say within the city council. We can certainly go and plead our case. But the matter of fact is I'm not able to vote yes or no for Chuck at this point. And so we want to make sure it's thoughtful and that the correct precedent is set in all of the county.
How difficult is it going to be to annex that whole land in between the current Lakeview city limits and the areas? Now, is Ross incorporated now?
A small portion of Ross is incorporated. When you talk about Ross, from a large community, but it's really just the store and a few homes that are right in the center.
Lakeville is a perfect example of being part of a neighborhood in the city of Waco, but it's not incorporated. It has a school district, but it is a community. How difficult is it going to be to bring this land in so that the city would be providing city services for everyone that is annexed?
The difficult part would be the actual acquisition of the rights of way. Those are contract negotiations that we have with private landowners. We have accesses to run infrastructure in the existing roadway. With the amount of tax base that we're talking about, running the infrastructure that we need with respect to water, and a dedicated effluent pipe. Our discussions with Waco are about actually putting an effluent treatment on one of their sewer mains in order to grab the effluent out of that property and then ship it up to Ross. And of course, that then becomes an industrial line that would serve everything between the Brazos River and Ross. And it would help them eat, it would help Lacy, Lakeview, it would help the city of Waco, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like that every time. You see the data center debate functioning about, our limited infrastructure and we can't support that. And it's completely the opposite. The data centers are moving to these areas, relatively unincorporated areas, relatively undeveloped areas, because the cities largely don't have the infrastructure the data centers need either. Waco's got crown jewels with Lake Waco and their industrial parks. They just happen to be not ideal for what data centers need as we look forward to going into this new age. So the data centers are moving outside of those bubbles, and they are bringing the infrastructure with them. They told us they were negotiating a 24-inch gas main, and I went, hey, you got neighbors. And now the request is for a 42-inch gas main. So at every point, whether it's electricity, whether it's water, whether it's gas, everything that we've seen is that he is bringing more than they need. So the net impact on the entire eastern half of the county is substantially greater energy infrastructure to help fuel growth on the underserved and undeveloped part of the county.
Great point. I think it's hard to argue that maybe they're moving into a place that serves their needs. I think any business will do that. So I think for them to do that. The challenge is they're coming into areas that really can't combat that, right? So we don't have to say we're unincorporated. And quite frankly, this is not Lacy, Lakeview, but they don't have many systems in place that would support very robust requests for proposals for these types of large construction that really need project management, deep finance, consultants, and things like that to understand this piece that we have. We're talking a $10 billion complete build out. That's not insignificant. So I want to bring up a couple of things that Chucky had pointed out in terms of the service demand and utility. And, we're talking about a full build out, 1.2 gigawatts. That's enough to power 750,000 homes. Last time I looked, I think there was just over 100,000 homes in all of McLennan County. We're talking 15 to 16 million gallons of water per day. That would be equivalent, and I had to write it down here just to make sure, 150 to 200,000 households per day. So when we're talking about resources, yeah, we may have the resources today, but what is the proper growth strategy that we need to have in Waco, Lacy, Lakeview, McLennan County to support businesses that will come in, that will drive long-term tax revenue and permanent job growth? Right now, what we know about data centers, they will bring in thousands of jobs, of construction jobs, most often not local jobs. We're talking about people that are coming in for transient opportunities, and then lay the foundation for 50 to 100 permanent jobs, most of which are outsourced and are actually not on site. So I think we need to be mindful of the resources that are required when we're talking about long-term development in all of McLennan County.
Okay, well, I need to correct something. $15 million gallons a day is a number. Okay, that's a drawing right. But it's 15 million gallons to fill a closed loop system. So you draw for a day or two, you fill your closed loop system. And for every other day, all you do is add in the evaporation loss, which is approximately going to be, at least for the first phase, a little over 1 million gallons a day. As innovation continues, they're telling me they think they're going to get this thing cool for less than 2 million gallons a day. So both numbers are accurate, but it's terribly important to understand it's not 15 million gallons every day. It's 15 million gallons, but to be able to load your system, you have to have a drawing height for 15 million gallons. then subsequently you only draw what you need. And the amount of water that this data center needs is easily handleable with our existing contract with Lakeview. We have the water to handle easily the daily loss with a 7-digit number of gallons per day left over. So it's not an unworkable amount of water in the overall scope of things. A million gallons a day is 1 acre, 350. Sounds like a lot of water. It is a lot of water. But if you visualize it that way, it's about the amount of water in the stock tank on the property at the moment. So it's neither is it remarkable in terms of the industrial uses we have going on in Waco. We have a number of cardboard plants there. Waco's a little bit of a node in the country, for cardboard, right?
Well, when they brought in the graphic packaging deal for 1 million gallons a day, and we were in stage 3, brown, and I was my house around. So if you're going to be treating effluent that is circulating, but you'll be adding to that. Is that correct?
Hopefully not. They will need potable water for use in the buildings, of course, for their facilities. But they will be using effluent for all their landscaping, and that's one thing that a minor detail that matters. There's a 300-foot green belt all the way around this property, and that will have an impact on noise, the ability of noise to migrate off the property. And in reality, what most of the residents will ultimately see when construction is completed is a forest, perhaps a few rooftops above the forest. So the water, though, is a very easy problem. We've got plenty of water. Are we going to have another question about water?
Well, I was going to ask about agriculture first. I know that is a concern as far as the effect of the data center on surrounding agriculture. And there's a lot of agriculture out in the O5. Is that something you want to address?
Yeah, I think absolutely. So, going back to water is water, no matter if it's affluent, it's part supplement, right? If we go back to 2023, before we had this awful historic flood that rebuilt Lake Waco, we were in a pretty rough position. So, yeah, I think we just got to be mindful of what that means for us and remember the history so it does not repeat itself. Let's prepare for what that might mean. But agriculturally speaking, right now, there are cattle on the land. Right now, it's operationalized to run. I believe Steve's going in this month, if it's not already in so far. There's also surrounding land with cattle that are currently being run. What we don't know, and again, it goes with a lot of unknowns, is how is this going to impact a lot of those cattle operations to runoff. You have to be very mindful of what that's going to mean. In Boston County not too long ago, there was a major disruption and affluent came into a creek, killed off a lot of cattle. I don't think many owners want that to occur, and because, at least in the Valley Mills, because the city was immune, there was no recourse for those owners of that cattle. So, agriculturally speaking, I think we're really in this odd juxtaposition of a place where we want to see this growth in demand, but we need to have the cattle industry, agricultural industry supported. Hence, going back to my earlier comment, we have to make sure when we have this type of growth, it's in the right place and it serves the right purpose. I don't think taking over the land serves that right purpose.
Can I just address about the water when they keep floating away from me? Another way to look at the water, there's perhaps no aspect of this project that has been more curious to me in how the narrative about a shortage of water has taken over. It is the penumbra in which all the conversations happen. The facts are the Brazos River dumps 5.4 billion with a B gallons of water into the Gulf of America every day. Just talked to BRA this week, 1.8 billion gallons a day, on average, flow underneath the suspension bridge in Waco. And we're talking about a daily use of about 1 million gallons a day on a river that could support, if we were, this is a blending, of course, 1,000 data centers worth of water flowing through Waco every day. And we're talking about one data center using a million. So the reality is we do not have a shortage of water. We have a shortage of water pipe. Imagine being on the board of Elmont Water, Chalk Bluff Water, Ross Water, watching your well decline by inches and feet every year, and you're at your drawing limit on the well. You can't add new meters to generate revenue. You've got to go raise some money on people who are mostly retired working class and agricultural families who are not high income families. We deal with that in Lacy, Lakeview on our tax base, the same things. So again, we have ample water. Our goal of the city is to turn water into tax base, because it's tax base that lays the pipe to bring the water from where it is to where it's needed. This project is going to eliminate water supply as a concern for Chalk Bluff, Ross, Elmont, and Lacy Lakeview for the foreseeable future, to the tune of 25 million gallons a day, which is against drawing rights in those systems, for example, of 275,000 gallons a day. So I really think that there's no better way to show how narratives get out of whack, and how what is perceived to be a threat is not all a threat, it's actually a solution to the problem of water supply.
Hey, Paul, you mind if I respond to that? If that's okay? Please don't let me take over. Again, I appreciate the comments, and I think it makes sense when you're looking at the development of the tax base, right? You know, there's a big shiny object, how do we go about getting it? Maybe we have the resource today. I'm not necessarily worried about the resource today, I'm worried about the resource of my kids when they grow, my grandkids that I hope to see someday. We're talking fourth and fifth generation owners of property so far. What we're talking about in terms of water use, even at the efficiencies that maybe they're looking at, is a town of 50 to 60,000 people. So maybe we can support that today. Great. Well, what is that going to mean if we hit the growth targets that we want to see for City of Waco or McLennan County? Where are we going to be? Where are we setting ourselves up? Is it fair? This is a question. Is it fair for one company to come in and take that resource demand that now puts us in a position where we can't grow a decade from now, 20 years from now? I think we just have to be very mindful of what that means for us all in the future. This is a future tense decision that we're making today in terms of that resource. And then the argument I would have of, is there enough water? Again, maybe so, but then it argues, it asks the question of, why is McLennan County a water conservation district? Keyword conservation. If we had plenty of water, we probably wouldn't be in that district. Why is the city of Waco in stage 2 drought contingency year-round? So I think our leaders are already saying we have to be mindful of the resources that we have. And I don't think that that argument necessarily holds true in terms of the realities of what we're living with today.
How do you anticipate generating enough electricity?
For this particular project, I see that as the main limiting factor that will stretch out the timeline on the construction. And that's going to be true for a lot of data centers around the country. I saw we had the governor just announce there's 455 megawatts coming online in Houston. I think you're going to see more and more announcements of that. You have to view it in terms of the national policy. The trade deals that President Trump has negotiated generated pledges of around $20 trillion. Most of that money is going to be going into energy generation and infrastructure development. And the elegance of that is that it allows our tech companies to not have to get into the business of real estate development. It allows them to focus their energy, their expertise, and most importantly, their capital on what they do best, which is technology, AI, software, hardware, building robots of the future. So I think, again, this is an opportunity to solve problems, and we will see these energy plants announcements coming online steadily. I would anticipate you will see the amount of energy 5 years from now in Waco, what could be easily 10 times what it is today.
How can greater communication be created as we move forward? I understand, having worked in city and county government, and it's difficult to get all the pieces together in one county. Some of it comes from here, some of it comes from there, some of it comes from actual workers, and most of it comes from your office. How can this group work together in the future to move down the same road? I mean, I don't even agree with myself all the time, much less expecting everybody to hold hands and sing kumbaya. But how can we open communication and keep that open and move down?
We talk after meetings. Sarah stayed we were almost an hour. We visited. We've been open to Ross. They've come to our meetings. People who wanted to stay late and visit, we stay until they're tired of talking. It's a little easier to talk one-on-one again because you're not making public statements that can be misconstrued and create problems for the developers or create problems for the other taxing entities that are involved. We welcome that dialogue. I have a commitment. I promised Chris and one other gentleman in the group that I have his number that we would get together for lunch. We want to have those discussions because we need to hear, if we're going to be giving back, if you will, it's not the purpose of the special purpose district per se, but that's the reason that I have been pushing them so hard, the L2D2 thing that is, under discussion for months, is it's a way to give back. Special purpose district is a way to make sure that the community of Ross, which is going to bear the burden of imposition here, is going to get something back in return for their efforts.
Yeah, so, I mean, we definitely have had those conversations, but again, I think it goes more to questions that are still unanswered. And the position that we're at is, we're not against data centers. We want to make sure they're in the right place for the long term that support the proper growth we should have. Yeah, I want to go to work, and I want to be able to come home. And those should be separate places, specifically when we're talking about commercial buildings and construction. In terms of working together, I think that's an important thing for all of us to be able to do. And, one of the things that we really have as a community, I think that we've done really well is being very accountable and coming in and being respectful of the process and making sure we're talking to who we need to talk to. But the simple matter of the fact is we really to this point have been forced to find out more on our own. What we don't want to occur is, like we found out about this news breaking in December, things that happened maybe months beforehand. What we don't want is now we're in a position like many communities where ground is breaking, and now what do we do, right? So we want to be out in the forefront. We want to have those conversations. I think that's important, and that's the biggest concern that we have is at what point are we not behind baseball?
And to add to that, we've had some conversations. Some of the consultants recommended to us. We like the idea. We're looking at April for an open house. And I had a brief call this morning with Key. They were open to this. I can't do it until they're ready because at the end of the day, Lacy Lakeview didn't buy the property. We didn't recruit it for Key. It's not our subdivision, our development. The upshot of it, though, is they have to have enough to where they can share, and they feel like their plans are firm enough. But we're looking at sometime in April having an open forum, job fair type environment where the various vendors and subcontractors, including Infrastructure and the city, can all come have tables around the room, and the citizens can come around and talk and one-on-one and get some of these answers and see some of the things that we have to see. Because it's been the most difficult and frustrating part for me. I mean, I get completely where they're coming from. They can't get the answers. And the problem is, Infrastructure's working out solutions to a lot of these problems, and what they're working on today may prove to be unworkable. And perhaps the solution requires changes on other aspects. You've been through that with your commercial construction thing. And so it sounds like a moving target if you get out, the messaging gets out ahead of the development. So I have every confidence these things will come together and we will see the answers. It's just we have to be a little more patient to let them solve some of these problems that they're trying to overcome.
All right, thank you all. You can turn the program over to President Dana.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your thoughtful discussion. You really educated me on the different sides, and I appreciate this. You being here, and I appreciate Kay Paul for being our MC/moderator. And I want to re-welcome all of our guests. We're so glad that you came and were a part of Rotary today. And I just want to re-welcome our student guests and wish you nothing but good luck and good fortune. And if there's anything that Rotary can ever do for you in the future, please feel free to reach out to us. We appreciate you very much, and thank you to your mothers. This next season is going to come quick, and there'll be tears. And thank you to the administrators for shaping the future. So, next meeting is going to be March 9th with Lydia Tate from KWBU. So mark your calendars. And now if you would all stand with me at the end of our Rotary meeting, we recite 4 lead passages on your table and also here on the
Prayer while concerned, fulfill goodwill and better friendships, looking to the beneficial of all concerned.
Rotary is adjourned.